Welcome back from the lunch break. So we're moving from a science-led angle to a data technology-led angle. So TechBio, is it truly simplifying complexity? So it's debatable on the term TechBio alone. So is it simplifying complexity or is it something else? What is it trying to achieve? So our upcoming session is going to debate this and promises to demonstrate first-hand examples of how this approach is delivering value to help us answer the question on whether the outcomes are indeed better, leading to better patient outcomes. So I guess you could say that when we talk about TechBio, data is at its core, and we are generating more and more of it. Therefore, it is more important than ever to have data that is well organized, searchable, and reproducible. Our keynote speaker, just to add, our session is being sponsored by Zenzero. Thank you. So our keynote speaker for this session is Susana Tomasio from Collaborative Drug Discovery. Susana is going to talk about FAIR data principles and their platform CDD Vault for enabling collaboration. So Susana, I'd like to welcome you up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just get some water. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here after lunch. So in this presentation, I will talk about how CDD Vault is crucial in implementing FAIR data principles within research environments, and I will explore the main features in CDD Vault that support FAIR data practices. So mainly the assay registration and the common assay template, which help to standardize and organize information about bioassays. Okay, so hopefully this slide helps to show some of the main data challenges that the researchers find within their research environments, ranging from data silos caused by the scientists working isolated in different departments, developing their own unique systems, processes, and data, to the incompatibility between instruments and software, disrupting the smooth data analysis and integration efforts. Also, the use of unique data formats and the lack of standardized vocabulary restrict the efficient data sharing. Also, quite often, scientists work with different entities, and that can also complicate the data processing. But also, very important is the accessibility and portability of data and metadata. So migrating to another system may be challenging due to the multi-hierarchical layers of some metadata. And in essence, scientists spend so much time putting the metadata in, and then it can be quite hard to actually get the data out for some systems. So these limitations also contribute to the difficulty in keeping the data fair, which should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Okay, so how can we change this landscape? And how can we make the life easier for within these research environments? So CDD Vault is an online platform which allows users to store, manage, and analyze their data in a collaborative way. And CDD Vault obeys the FAIR data principles of data management and has over 20 years of experience in storing, managing, and organizing chemical and biological data in a collaborative environment. So it is a flexible web platform which you can use to store your molecules, your biological entities, and the assay data. So it can also be seen as your own single source of truth, your ecosystem, where your internal and external collaborators can collaborate in an easy-to-use web interface. So central to CDD Vault is the activity and registration system. But when I say registration, what do I mean, right? And why is that important? So it's, in essence, to ensure data integrity and traceability, right? And to allow the easy access and retrieval of the data, and therefore to facilitate collaboration and sharing, and to have it readable and reusable by AI systems. Of course, to protect your IP as well, and to enable researchers to make informed decisions. Okay, so in the activity and registration system, the users can register their assets. So they can register their molecules, their proteins, DNA sequences, their biological entities, mixtures. And also, as important as the asset registration is actually the assay registration. So you want to have a scientific database platform which is with well-described assays, and that's as important as the registration of your assets, of your molecules, biological entities, or other types. And this is why this can be facilitated within CDD Vault with our assay registration capability, where you can use a combination of protocol fields to annotate your assays, run fields as well, and you can utilize the Common Assay template and the Pistoia Alliance template, which are designed to capture the primary features of a biological assay. So you can use a collection of predefined terms from various ontologies, such as the target ontology, the cell line ontology, and then having a well-defined assays registered in your CDD Vault will give you the ability to compare the assays across different sources, systems, and even organizations. Okay, so we'll start focusing on the registration of the assets, right? And starting here with the registration system, which, as I mentioned before, this is central to CDD Vault. And this is allow the users to register the compounds and other biological entities and all the metadata associated with it. So what we see here is, in this case, it's a small molecule, and all of the metadata associated with that, and all these fields are previously created by the Vault administrator. So the system is flexible enough in a way that you can create your own fields and then populate with appropriate information. But of course, you can also register CDD Vault to, you can use CDD Vault to register other types of entities. In this case, we have cell lines along with all the metadata, but you can use it also for the registration of amino acids, oligos, mixtures. In this example, it's a protein, so an amino acid sequence. So what we can do once we have registered the entities is actually we can search and report. What we have here is a report table, and on the left-hand side we have the structure of the compounds and also the metadata and the associated assay data to these batch molecules. And of course, in this example, we have a dose response curve where we can also overlay the curves from other compounds as well, so you can compare the activity between different molecules. Okay, so focusing now on the assay registration, so usually the first step is to register the assets, so your compounds or whatever entity you work with in your research environment. And normally we associate these assets with data. But in reality, this data itself comes in different formats, and the assay data is a data definition on its own. So the assay protocols are used to associate the data that we get from the experiments, and they are usually defined with unstructured text, right, with non-standard language that is difficult to search and compare, and therefore to use further down the line with AI, for example. So the idea is that we can use this assay registration with well-defined fields where, I think I lost the mic, okay. So yeah, most assay databases will include fields that are free text, as I mentioned before, non-normalized, and that makes it hard to use further down the line with AI models. And this is why the assay registration is useful, because you can standardize and you can make this data fair. And this is what we do in CDD Vault. So you want to capture all the information regarding the assay you want to do. And how can you capture that? So usually is writing text, but in this example, what we can do with the assay registration is to use keywords. So keywords are well defined, because then you can use it with the AI. So what we do in here, in this example for the screening assay, is that we can have a set of fields that are created by the super user, and then they can be populated by the end user whenever the protocol is created. So they will keep the information about the assay that you're running. And then you can also use with ontologies and with the common assay template and the Pistoia Alliance template. So what we see here is a protocol definition with protocol fields or attributes as defined by the Vault administrator. And then the protocol definition is in essence a set of instructions that will tell CDD Vault what to do with the data. But then when we run an assay, we have multiple runs, right? So we have multiple experiments, and we can also define those fields that are specific for each run of the assay. And you can also label all those runs with keywords that best describe the run of your assay. But then going a little bit further down the line, we can create templates. So what we want to do is facilitate the life of the scientist, right? So the scientist will have some data to register, they will want to create a protocol, and we can create templates that the end user will use for that specific type of protocol or assay. And we use that with the protocol forms, which again will have the specific fields for those types of assays that are run in the lab. And then again, the same for the runs. And of course, you can use the ontologies, the common assay template and the Pistoia assay template to annotate the assays and get a well-defined assays registered in your system. So what we end up with, and what we see here in this property grid, is a series of well-defined assays. And we see a number of protocol definitions. So this is what we see at the top of the screen. So these are the assays that we run in the lab. And then on the left, we have all of the fields that describe those assays. So this gives the ability to the users to actually compare the assays and actually see if there's anything that's, if there's a particular assay that you still need to run in your lab. Okay, now the whole idea is because we have this data that is well defined, you can take the data with any API and move it around and use it, apply it within your API workflows. So the idea is to have well-defined, curated data, which you can take and then apply your AI models or any other analyses. And CDD Vault does include a RESTful API, which enables the easy connection with other systems and integrates these assay forms and definitions with other systems. So in summary to what I've mentioned so far is that CDD Vault can be used as your own single source of truth and can be used to register your assets, so your molecules, proteins, oligos, mixtures, biological entities, and the assay data. And this is what we have here highlighted. But of course, that we also have a sample level inventory, which can be used to store the samples, the locations. So this can either be if you have sample types, storage conditions, that can be also stored in CDD Vault. And then we have a visualization tool, which allows the users to plot, filter, and mine the data. and an electronic lab notebook, which is well integrated with the registration system and allows the users to capture all the details of their experiments and then register the data from the ELN. So this is just an example of what I mentioned, so that's for the visualization. And then the electronic lab notebook, which can be used by both chemists and biologists. So it can be used either for your synthesis, if you are a chemist, or if you are a biologist and you want to capture all the results of your experiments, you have a flexible tool where you can use that and then register the data in the structure side of the vault. So, as mentioned, the CDD Vault includes a RESTful API, which can be used to connect with other tools, and you can use CDD Vault either as your ecosystem, as your own single source of truth, or you can use it you can plug it in to an existing IT infrastructure to extend your data sharing capabilities. So this is just a slide with some examples, some of the examples of the customers that we currently have and are using CDD Vault. And I will stop here and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
We do have a minute, oh gosh, a minute or so. So if there are any questions, I've got colleagues with microphones. No. Well, if I could ask you one then, Susana. So when companies are considering an infrastructure like yours, what would make CDD Vault, what would be your kind of pitch to them? Why should they sort of pick you? How would you be enabling for that company?
Yeah, I mean, so as mentioned before, so collaboration is one of our strengths, right? So collaboration and then the ability to capture both types of data, so chemistry and biology. So I would say that it's one of the main aspects.
Excellent. And as we've heard today, more and more these partnerships are less sort of transactional and more sort of like, long-term, forward-looking partnerships as well, where companies come together to kind of plan a whole journey, really. So it's I guess part of this session is showcasing. So what we heard this morning were the actual assets, and then this afternoon is kind of more of those enabling tools and technologies which you need as part of that journey. So thank you very much, Susana. Thank you.
So just thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move from a data custodian angle to a security angle. With great pleasure, I'd like to welcome Naveen Kaushik to the stage from Zenzero. So as I said, the angle is going to be slightly more sort of data security. So really looking forward to this. So welcome up, Naveen.
Is this work? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Naveen. I'm the commercial director at Zenzero. For the interest of clarity, I'm the one on the left. This is a bit of an interesting presentation. It's a bit of an outlier as well, and you'll see why towards the end. I've been with the organization or within this sector for clarity for about 20 years. And I've had roles ranging from commercial, technical, pre-sales, consulting. I've not flipped burgers during that time, but I've done a lot. But it's been good, and that's how I've earned my grace. I wanted to talk about 3 things today. First one is tell you a little bit about Zenzero and why I'm here. Secondly, to talk about data, obviously. And the third one is how we secure that data and how we help organizations secure their IP. So who's Zenzero? So we are an MSP, a managed service provider. So we help organizations with the setup of their IT infrastructure. We help them with the IT support services. We manage the infrastructure for them, but we also specialize in 2 key areas. One is data development services, and the second one is cybersecurity, so it's protecting that information, protecting that IP. As an organization, we have 12 offices in the UK, Guernsey, Jersey, Dubai, South Africa, 2 sites, and Australia. So pretty much a follow-the-sun support. So over 460 employees and growing. Suffice to say, we've got a pretty strong presence in Cambridge for the last 20 years. Now, you're probably wondering, what is an MSP doing at a life sciences conference? So one of the key areas that we specialize in, and one of the key areas that our local brand in Cambridge specializes in, is supporting the biotech sector. And we have experience over this last 15 years working with organizations. So coming out of university with the great ideas, getting seed funding, then helping an organization with 5, 10 employees set up securely, set up data securely, set up the infrastructure securely, and then we've witnessed their journey all the way from 5 to 10 employees, all the way to 300, 500, all the way through to gaining investment and going through IPO. So we've seen the path, we've seen the hurdles, we've seen the challenges, and we understand them, and we know how to get past them. So that's our story within the biotech sector. Now, when these companies, they go through a breakthrough on a clinical trial, they suddenly explode. They grow so fast overnight, and we've helped organizations do that overnight without a single creak or a crack in the infrastructure. So everything that we've set up is available, secure, and scalable. And that's our learning, and that's our expertise within the biotech sector. We talk about data. And there's a really interesting saying about data, and I really quite like it. It's without data, you're deaf and blind and stood in the middle of a highway. And without structured data, and this is something that we talk about internally, is without structured data, you are deaf, blind, stood in the middle of the highway with your shoelaces tied. And those are the pitfalls that we see with organizations who sometimes set up very quickly in stealth mode, thinking this is great. All we want to do is focus on our IP, focus on development, focus on developing the idea that they've come with. So we help them not to make those mistakes. We help them so that they can grow and scale, and they don't lose their IP through that way. The other thing about structured data is gaining insight. Is gaining insights and bringing business intelligence from that data as well. So once it's structured correctly, data lakes, for example, once it's scalable, once it's available, and when it comes to a stage where you apply business intelligence, where you apply AI, machine learning to it, bad data will still give you bad output. Good data, structured data, is where you get meaningful output, is when you're trying to reduce your time from, I don't know, a trial of 24 days to 2 days. You could do that, but to get meaningful output from that, it all starts with strong foundations. And this is how we work within the biotech sector. Now, we've got something quite different, quite exciting at the end of this presentation. So I won't take too much time on this slide, but if you did want to talk through it, please find me in the next break. Very happy to talk through it. Now, I'm going to pivot from data setup foundations to security. So security is very, very key for us. We've been specialists within this area for the last 20 years. The way we've set up security is based on the NIST framework. And the NIST framework is, the foundation of this framework is the 5 key pillars. I'm sure you must have seen it, heard it. And that's identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So essentially, on the left, the identify, protect is simply to make sure your foundations are strong and the bad guys cannot get in. You do not lose your IP, you do not get compromised, your identity is secure, your trial data is secure, your devices are secure, and so forth. But if you were to be compromised, do you know, can you detect that your environment, your organization, your device, your identity has been compromised? And if you can find that out, what can you do? Do you have an incident response plan in place? When things do go wrong, when it does hit the fan, do we just lose control? No. You should have an incident response in place, but at that point, if it were to happen, can you recover from such an incident and get back to BAU? Again, very, very critical, and we absolutely make sure our clients are aware of this, foundations are strong, and we always protect them, and we've not had a single incident. So in terms of the services, the way we wrap our services around the NIST framework is very much in the same vein. We identify the assets, the most important critical assets for the organization. We wrap our services around them, or tools and technologies around them to protect those assets. And then we put monitoring services in place. So we have people with eyes on glass 24/7 monitoring those assets, monitoring every single raw log, looking for anomalies. So when we do spot an anomaly, we can stop it in its track then and there. And if an environment were to be compromised, we are there right at the minute of the compromise to make sure that the company, the organization can get back to BAU pretty much immediately or as quickly as possible. So those are, at a high level, our security services. Now, we've seen our clients sometimes get affected, even though they're not affected, but they're affected by the broader impact of the cyber risk we have around data and IP. For example, one of our clients is dependent on data from a university hospital, and that university hospital had recently been compromised by a cybersecurity attack. So the impact is quite wide, and we feel it. And in our organization, there's so many times we go and we talk about these stories, we give examples, we use data, and the impact can only go so far. So we've changed our strategy. We've changed how we talk about cybersecurity. And the best way to demonstrate the risk is to actually show you in real time how easy it is. So in a minute, I'm going to call my colleague, Abs. He's been an actual hacker for 20 years. And he has a 100% track record. And very recently, this is the beginning of the year, Abs and his team were asked by a bank who pretty much have the most, or should have the most secure infrastructure in place, to see if we could hack a bank. And in about 40 days, we were in. We had keys to the kingdom. So if you can do that to a bank, imagine how exposed you are if you're working in stealth mode only. You think you're not visible, you're always visible as long as you have an infrastructure and a connection in place to the internet. So I'm going to call Abs, who literally within 6 minutes is going to demonstrate how he can compromise a device, get into an environment, and install ransomware. That's us.
Sit by the bell.
There you go.
Thank you. Just before the hack started, I didn't have so many whites, but yeah, there we go. I'm Abs, or Abdul. For the first time, I'm not the smartest one in the room. I have been impressed what I've heard so far today, but essentially what we are going to be presenting and the scene that I want to set is that it is this easy to hack, but I'm trying to prove that one click is enough. Following your curiosity, clicking on the link to see what's out there is enough for me to take complete and unequivocal control of your desktop, your laptop, and your organization you work for. So just to set the scene, if you can go to the next slide, but just leave it there for just a moment. So on the left-hand side, we have the hacker, and on the right-hand side, we have our user, or the hacker would essentially say that's their victim. This is all available for free. Who's watched Mr. Robot here? You heard of Mr. Robot? Okay. Now, I'm pretty impressed with Mr. Robot. A lot of the techniques used in that show is what we do, but it's not as glamorous as Mr. Robot. But anyway, all of these tools are actually available for free. And if you want to test this and do your research, you can do it in a safe environment. We call it laboratories, but you guys do the actual lab work. But there's something called a penetration testing lab where you can download for free and test this out. Or you can catch me after the demo and I can talk you through it. Yes, if you can go ahead and play the demo. So the hacker is essentially starting their hacking platform or command and control center. Now, we're using an element of AI here. I know AI is a talked about term and it's the thing that we do, but we've been doing this for the last 20 years. Instead of me identifying a vulnerability to go after, this tool will set up a link for me that it will go after and look for the vulnerabilities in the browser, the software, Java, Chrome, Firefox, and so forth. I don't have to do anything other than convincing the user to click on my link. So the hackers set up an email, it looks convincing enough, and sends the email to their victim. On the right-hand side, we see a notification come up, and the victim will essentially open up the email. They'll take a moment to read the contents, And this is a real email I've based this on to say that your patent has been disputed, which is possible, absolutely. You might have gone through it. Click on this link to carry out next and following steps. Straight away, the link's been clicked. The hacker has seen activity on the command and control center. And well, essentially, Shelly is not seeing anything other than a pop-up, come up and disappear, come up and disappear. And in a moment, they'll minimize their screen and the hacker will have complete control over that machine. But Shelly, you'll notice throughout the course of this demo, sees nothing else happening. So they've opened up something called a session, and essentially that's access to the victim's machine, and they will... Does anyone remember command prompt? If you're pre-Windows 95, like myself, you'll notice this tool. It's still used today, it's still happening, just because we have this nice shiny GUI, but the access that we have is essentially unsophisticated, meaning all we can do is find out, who am I? I'm Shelly, but we can't go any further than that unless we elevate that status to a more sophisticated shell. So the attacker has access to Shelly's machine, but all they can do is find out who I am and where they are in that machine, not move away from that folder. Now, they are essentially putting a piece of malware in a file called payload.exe. That file will be downloaded on the victim's machine. Again, Shelly's seeing no difference happening on her machine. In a moment, the hacker will go back into the unsophisticated CMD command prompt access and download this new sophisticated malware. Command runs successfully. He is now going to, well, that's been downloaded. He's going to essentially invoke a command to open that program up. And once he does, he's got a Meterpreter shell. Now, Meterpreter essentially is a more feature-rich command prompt or a terminal access that allows you not just to move away to a different folder, such as Shelly's documents, but also do things like record the microphone or open up the webcam. He's found an interesting folder called Tech. Let's see what happens when we go into that folder. In the interest of time, we have files here that I'm going to download, but I won't open up for privacy reasons. But essentially, there's a file called grant application. There's forecasts and results.xls. Those are going to be downloaded on the hacker's machine. Shelly is seeing no change happening on her desktop. He's then going to minimize the window and move to a more GUI-based clickable event. And you can see the files have been downloaded. Now, what else can we do? Is that all? Just exfiltrate and steal data? No. In a moment, the hacker will essentially move to a more heavy-hitting approach. Everything the victim or Shelly sees, the hacker will see. But just before doing that, he will start something called a keylogger. Anything that Shelly types in, the hacker will get access to. You've heard of keyloggers before? And essentially, that's exactly what we're doing here. Now, we've got something called screen share or screen mirroring. Shelly has returned from lunch and is going to navigate to SharePoint. On the left-hand side, the hacker sees that. But there's no notification. She's looking at the BioCorp news and updates of the organization and so forth, and then starts doing some light tasks in the afternoon. So she'll move on to documents, and straight away, the hacker sees exactly what Shelly's seeing. I won't open up the files, but you can see the picture. Anything that Shelly does, the hacker sees. Anything that Shelly goes through, the hacker sees. He can exfiltrate that data. He can view that information. This would have legal, financial, reputational damages. Maybe that organization is a startup that cannot recover from if they were hacked. This is happening. And it's a simple link click that leads to this devastating outcome. So, what's next? Well, the hacker essentially will wait until Shelly has minimized, and maybe she'll go for another break, or she's returning from a break. And he's going to take complete, utter control over not just the machine, but he's going to extort the organization out of their funds, maybe their grant, etc. Now, he has essentially uploaded a file into Shelly's machine. Again, no notification, no antivirus. This is being done through a very specific vulnerability through AI. And now that he has put the file on the machine, he's gone back into the folder, and he's going to warn Shelly to say, We'll find out in a second. Does that look familiar to anyone? This is, if we can just pause it there for a moment so we can read the contents of the page. All right. It's okay. It's live demos, right? Absolutely. We can't go all the way back to the beginning, but if we go back, I shouldn't have done that. If we just go back, sorry, yeah, that was one. Can we play from maybe the middle, around the middle? Any way we can do that? I can't access it, can I? Okay, well, essentially, yeah, well, let's do it this way. Let's go back to, let's just share the screen. And if you press the play button, okay, got it, no worries. So the point I'm trying to make is that I'm using our experience of what we have seen in the field. That message that you saw there is one that we've seen when we were doing a forensic analysis of one of our new clients that essentially came to us in a time of need. We've been extorted, this is the message. And the message essentially read that if your IT team was better, this wouldn't have happened. How devastating to hear that as IT. I've got an IT background. But essentially, if your IT and your security team were better, this wouldn't have happened. Okay, I don't think we can go back. This is what I'm getting. So essentially, at this point, what would have happened is, can we just share the screen? No, okay, that's fine. So, ransomware. This is what it was leading to. It was a warning to say if your IT team was better, this wouldn't have happened, and I would have complete control. And a couple of years ago, we saw something called WannaCry. Does anyone remember that ransomware? The reason it was coined WannaCry or named WannaCry is because it wanted to make you cry. The NHS was brought to its knees. Users were essentially, patients were not getting appointments. And it was because this malware completely took control of the entire NHS. And this is what I was proving here, is that a link click might seem innocent to begin with, but that link click leads to complete control, exfiltrating data, and then extorting that organization to say, if you want your files back, pay us in Bitcoin or pay us in dollars, whatever the case is. And in doing so would mean that you get your files back. But if you don't pay us, then we will give your files away for free. How many of us think that we'll get our files back if we paid that ransom? Things have progressed, things have changed. I actually have support lines set up, so you can ring them and say, listen, you've taken my files, I've tried to pay, I've tried to send the Bitcoin, but I've not got my files back. Sorry, we can help you. Let's go through that process. That is become that level of professionalism that they are providing you first, second, and third line IT support to get your files back. Absolutely mental, but it's happening. But in most cases, you won't get your files back. So when they say we don't negotiate with certain types of people, this is what they're essentially referring to is, if this happens, you report it to the government or whoever the helpline is. There's lines out there, don't pay the ransom. And yes, we can help. So just to set the premise, why am I here, is we essentially replicate the hackers so they don't do the same, i.e. we let you know where your vulnerabilities are so they can be fixed in a safe and safe environment, basically, a lab environment. Okay, that's throwing me off. Who thinks I recovered from that slide? Okay, anyway, if anyone has any questions, then feel free to catch me outside, and then we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Any questions? Actually, ask some questions, and by then, it might get to the point where it's gone. I've tried. Anyone got any questions? No? Yep.
Well, I did have a question, actually, because I've heard the biggest vulnerability in a business is people and not technology.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
So this is primarily the reason why this happened. If you're using Windows or Mac OS or Linux, technology is difficult, it's hard to hack. Criminals are typically one step ahead of the technology, and they're finding new vulnerabilities all the time. However, a new update's released, a new patch is released, a new version of iOS or macOS or Windows is released, fixing that vulnerability. Guess what? Doesn't get fixed. It's our behavior. And because we're not listening to the security awareness that we're all given on a monthly or annual basis, we are usually the weakest link that allows an attacker to come in. In the bank example that we were given earlier, that one individual was the reason the entire bank was taken down. If they hadn't called the number or clicked the link in the email, then none of this would be possible. People are also the reason why I still have a job. Any other questions? Yes, absolutely, go for it.
Hi, that's better. Christian Jones from Nanoform. Very interesting. A question about AI being used by companies. So, we're all encouraged to try and do things smarter, be more productive, use tools that are available like ChatGPT and OpenAI.
Yeah.
But what advice do you give to companies that want to be more productive and use these types of tools from a security perspective?
Well, would you believe that the email that I showed on screen earlier was written by ChatGPT? Would you believe that? Because it was. I'm using ChatGPT because I need to keep up my skill level. If I'm using it, other people are using it as well. Hackers are using it, and there's levels of ChatGPT. There's a safe way to use it and a more dangerous way. For organizations, my advice would be to embrace it rather than blocking the website, because people will find a way of getting around it. In the same respect, we had a question the other day of, well, why didn't the antivirus pop up to block you in your tracks? In this particular example, Shelley was using her personal machine, her BYOD device, that doesn't have the same lockdown principles applied. So they'll find a way. They'll find, I don't know if that...
Yeah, we just take one more comment because we're up to time, but yeah.
To answer your question, we do have organizations to use AI in a secure manner. So then there are additional layers of technology and solutions you can put in place, like data loss prevention, which tracks your critical IP and information. And those are the information you do not want to enter into, for example, ChatGPT. So we do a secure implementation of AI, publicly available, but within that secure environment. So you can still protect your information and still use AI. Hopefully that answers you.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
So Nab will be part of the panel as well, so we can save some questions. But thank you, that was amazing.
Thank you very much.
It's actually, I've got my heart rate up a bit. I found that quite tense. So I'm now very pleased to welcome to the stage Carina Kern from LinkGevity, a startup AI-enabled drug discovery company in the organ preservation space. So over to you, Carina. Welcome.
Perfect. So good afternoon. Lovely to meet you all. To begin, I think the best place to often start with sizing up a problem is to just look at general trends. And here I've put up what you can see as one of, or probably the greatest challenge in medicine today. And if you look from the 1900s to more recent times, you will see that while we've come up with many ways to tackle pathogenic disease, it is the non-pathogenic, multifactorial, and typically age-related disease that is a growing burden. So just to give you one example, if you look at kidney disease, right? Why is dialysis such a problem? So if you look at kidney disease, in just the last 30 years, you have seen around a 200% increase. Now, in terms of, yes, there's a phenomenal cost, but more so, this is a problem that all of us face. Each and every one of us in this room has a 50% risk of developing at least one multifactorial disease by the time we are 60. And as you increase with age, that problem increases, that risk increases. Now, what happens if one could intervene? Well, apart from the great market potential there's also, the key factor, we are going to be able to increase human health span and also, of course, push the frontiers of medicine and science. So where does technology come in? What could one look to actually try and do? You can try and apply AI to the problem. And if you look at generally what most companies here have done, they've applied AI to, in particular, trying to identify new targets for drugs. And this is also the space in which we operate. There are, however, two key hurdles. The first hurdle is you need phenomenal computational power. The second hurdle is you need vast amounts of information, and here biological information, to actually come up with a new drug discovery. And unfortunately, despite the vast amounts of biological information out there, that is only the tip of the iceberg. We lack biological information. All right, how does one deal with that? One of the areas I've been working in is multifactorial disease and aging, and in particular, coming up with a novel lens to look at aging and age-related disease, a novel theory. And what we have done, and I've done this alongside the authors below, is structure our AI using this novel lens. And to show you the utility of that, what we did is go so far as to identify a new class of drug. Now, there was an interesting Economist article that went along the lines of, typically it takes around $3 million to come up with one new drug discovery. In our case, with 100,000, we managed to come up with this new class. And this is what we got. We managed to, for the first time, block a process known as necrosis. Now, necrosis comes from the Greek word nekros, meaning death, and it's best defined as irreversible organ and tissue damage. Where is it implicated? Well, in most of the top 10 killers. But it goes even further. It has hindered scientific research and development. For instance, in the space of organ preservation and tissue engineering. Suffice to say, necrosis has been a huge problem. What we have managed to get is an unprecedented 90% suppression with our drugs of necrosis in the lab. So the new class we've termed anti-necrotics. In terms of specific applications, I'm going to go through just 3 of them, which we're focusing on at the moment. One comes in the form of acute kidney injury. So the most susceptible organ to harsh stress, most would argue, is the kidney. For instance, another interesting article was on, would your kidneys survive a trip to Mars? Why? Because microgravity and radiation, they would very rapidly lead to kidney failure. Again, linked to dialysis. Okay, what about here on Earth? Well, heart attack, surgery, stroke, all of these are linked, again, to kidney injury. So one of our first use cases is developing a drug to take to clinic. One of the key features in this new class of drug is that they are repurposed drugs, which means the timeline to clinic is greatly expedited. In our case, we're looking to start phase 2 clinical trials by early next year. And of course, you can see it's a large market. Okay, 2 other use cases. The first one here is in tissue engineering. I don't know if there are any tissue engineers in the room, but if they are, I'm sure, as you would know, one of the biggest challenges really in tissue engineering is something called necrotic cores. Okay, so this is what happens. If you try and grow organs artificially in a lab, and you try and make these clusters of cells more than a few hundred microns in diameter, what happens is the central region gets starved of oxygen, gets starved of nutrients, and you get a central dead region, which you can actually see in the red dot on the top. Problem? Well, if you cannot make these artificial organs or organoids, you don't have good drug discovery systems, problems with regenerative medicine, and of course, you rely on animal testing, so there's a sustainability issue as well. Now, while these cores form within 24 hours, with our results, what we found is we can actually block these cores completely for up to 7 days. In fact, more recent trials, we've gone up to 11. So you have a use case there in tissue engineering. Another one, organ preservation. Now, really, the organ preservation market is a broken market. Why? Because you have around 90% of patients dying on the organ waiting list having never received an organ. But it is not that we don't harvest enough organs. The problem is we use less than 7% of the organs we harvest. Why? You cannot store organs. For example, the heart and lungs, you can only store them for 4 to 6 hours. You cannot store them for long. Again, because of necrosis. So what we've looked at doing, and we've done this with a mouse kidney, is we've taken out the organ, put it in the gold standard organ preservation media, and done this with and without our drug. And with the drug, you see a large extension of organ viability. So again, another use case. Just to end, in the organ preservation space, because it is a medical device, it's another expedited route to clinic. But just to say, with all of the discoveries that we're making, because they are the ones in the pipeline as well, not just the necrosis, overall we've decided to take a B2B model. So we typically license out any discoveries to commercial partners. And with that, thank you for listening.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Carina. I'm swiftly going to bring up the panel now, just so we're actually on time. Fantastic, brilliant. So I'm very pleased to introduce Rowan Gardner from PrecisionLife, who's going to guide our discussion, and I'd like to invite the rest of the panelists to come up, and they'll do their separate introductions. So Rowan, we agreed you were going to tell us what TechBio was all about.
Oh, that was a hospital pass. I agreed nothing of the sort.
Sorry, I'll just put it here.
Yeah. So the title for the session is TechBio, Is It Just Simplifying Complexity? So some of you in the room will know I'm a bit of a rule breaker. So I'm going to start by suspending the panel for 2 minutes, just to talk about simplifying complexity. So everyone in this room who is involved in growing businesses is engaged in telling our story. Great example we've just had in the warm-up conversations. And yeah, we all rely on people in the ecosystem who are good at telling stories. And over lunch, I learned that one of our community won an award last night. So it's great to be recognized by your peers, Victoria English. Victoria may be known to some of you as the editor of MedNows. If you don't know MedNows, you really should. It's a phenomenal journal full of very thoughtful commentary. Victoria was awarded the Science Editor of the Year award last night by the British Science Writers Association. And many of you will have had coverage in MedNows. So I just want to take a moment to congratulate one of ours. Whose day job is simplifying complexity. So well done, Victoria. Thank you very much. Okay, back to TechBio. So I think we've had a whole range of presentations in the run-up to the panel. I think regardless of whether you are a TechBio company, if you're actively engaged in discovery in the lab or in a clinical setting, you will be aware that you are using much more data and you have more ability to generate data than you've ever had before, I suspect. And so really on this panel, we've gathered together people who are not only operating TechBio platforms, but are developing tools enabled by data approaches, and also, are right at the front line. So we're going to use a bit of that, hopefully, to engage the audience, not just in what TechBio is, but just generally thinking about enabling your organization to use data more effectively, to be safe, and for all the CEOs in the room who were listening to Nav and the Abdul Hacking Roadshow, perhaps touch on a few good practices, which I'm very keen to hear about, because in addition to being a co-founder of PrecisionLife, I'm also on a non-exec director for Digital Health and Care Wales, where I chair the board subcommittee for data governance, security and patient safety. So guys, I'm all ears on that. PrecisionLife, for those of you who don't know, are a causal AI precision medicine business. We are focused on complex chronic diseases for all the reasons that we just heard about with the LinkGevity story. We have completed over 50 disease studies. We have a number of announced partnerships and 7 programs that we co-own with partners. As of this month, we've just started clinical trials, so we're very, very excited about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to open up the conversation with our panelists and ask them all to introduce their company, not just with a sales pitch, but actually describe how they enable or use these approaches to generate enterprise value. Or as John Wise, who anyone knows the Pistoria Alliance may have heard, John would probably sort of suggest that, rephrase that question as, that's all very well, Rowan, but what's it for? Okay? So if we can start now by just, just diving into, we've heard about what ZenBio can do, but Zero can do, but can you just give a really good example for how you've created value or perhaps stopped loss of value in some of your bio customers?
So I think the one that really comes to mind and the one that we found ourselves quite personally invested in. So we worked with a startup. We started working with them about 8 years ago, and they were a biotech company developing something very, very specific. I can't go into detail. But over the years, we witnessed the journey of the organizations. As I said, it was starting from 5 to 10 users all the way through to being acquired now. And the breakthrough they had, and we just recently found out that they've just treated just over 500,000 patients. And to be able to witness that journey all the way from being a startup coming out of university, to be able to help 500,000 patients avoid invasive surgery by the breakthrough that they made in the research they were doing. And we were so invested in not just the journey, but the impact it was making to the actual patients. So to help them through that process was a really rewarding experience for us, even as a tech company. So we provided the environment, a safe environment for them to flourish, grow, and continue their research ongoing.
So, Carina, I know how tough it is because we're sort of involved in similar problems. Perhaps you could give the audience a little bit of insight in how you see LinkGevity creating enterprise value, or also maybe partnering with others to help them with creating value in your partner businesses.
Sure. So just to summarize again, we are an AI-enabled drug discovery company. And yes, focusing on chronic disease, multifactorial, and typically these diseases typically happen to be age-related. In terms of creating value, it would be the new drug discoveries that we come up with, such as the anti-necrotic drug class we identified. And really, I think what is exciting when you identify new aspects of biology is very much the applications not just in the clinical, but also in the non-clinical space. And here you can rapidly do something. And in a way, what I've always loved more on the commercial front is making a tangible difference very quickly and getting something to market or to clinic very quickly. And I think in our case, the exciting aspect is we have opportunity to do that very rapidly, as you saw with our timelines. So for me, I think that ability to get things to clinic or to market in an expedited timeline creates the greatest value.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now, Cam, we haven't heard anything from you yet, so I want you to surprise people with the magnificence of Nuclera, what you're doing and how you're creating value.
Thank you. So I'm Cam Watson. I lead strategic partnerships for a company called Nuclera. And we've developed the e-protein discovery, which is a benchtop instrument that allows researchers to go from gene to protein in as little as 2 days. And the critical need that we really are addressing is that there's a major bottleneck in actually getting a protein. So it's all well and good generating all these insights and identifying some new target or designing a novel protein that you want to work with, but it doesn't matter if you can't bring that into the real world to actually work on it. And so, for example, we've worked with various groups who've spent, at times, years, though on average it's actually a few months, just trying to get a protein to start a project. And it's actually quite a large problem. Large pharma companies, if they can't get a target that they want within a few months, they'll actually just kill the whole program and move on to something else. And so by enabling researchers to be able to get that protein or a suite of proteins in as rapid as time as possible with as high an obtainability rate as possible, you're not only allowing them to go from that, theoretical framework into a real experimental framework, but you're also, by making it more accessible, you're allowing them to access lots of different proteins. So for instance, they can start to characterize all of the interactions that are going on around their specific target, for instance. And so I think, yeah, that's sort of the area that Nuclera is addressing that we've carved out for us. It's a small part of the whole drug discovery process, but a really critical one.
And I think a really nice illustration there about, we talk about data and the AI, whatever the AI is. And it all suddenly seems like it's gone into the ether and it's online, available for hackers, if you haven't got these guys on your side. But at some point, we're only generating hypotheses that need to be tested in the lab. Nobody believes anything until they've got those wet results. So that digital to real world piece, I think, is really powerful. And Susana, can I ask you to kind of, because you're more the other way, right? You're creating this ground truth. So how have you seen that create value for some of your partners?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, so I'm coming from collaborative drug discovery. So our product is CDD Vault. So we kind of help researchers to organize the data, right? So keep it, standardize the data and make it searchable, and actually prepare the data for if you are using any other tools like AI tools, for example. But also collaboration. So we all now, from what all of the companies that we have been working on, they all have partners all around the world. So because it's an online platform, it just facilitates the collaboration. So yeah, so I would say collaboration is kind of the key.
Absolutely, and I think we're all very excited by what we're seeing. You've got to remember that data is essentially the asset value we're creating in the company until we actually crystallize value. So putting it somewhere where we have we maximize the optionality to use those assets is really powerful. So I think what I would like our panelists to maybe reflect on. There's a lot of excitement about TechBio. Yeah, there's a lot of hype. I was speaking to someone at Bio at Zenzero. They just raised $1 billion seed round. And as they put it to me, yeah, well, Rowan, it just happens like that when you start a company that way. I thought, well, it doesn't just happen like that in my neighborhood. But anyway, I did like the concept. So I'd like to think, just what's the evidence that we're moving beyond the hype and impacting that translational innovation and our benefit to patients, because that's why we all turn up to work. So, now, what have you seen amongst your customers as real evidence that this is going beyond something exciting and something Victoria writes about?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I'll use data as an example in this one, and you had a question earlier about adopting AI and the processing of data and the expansion and how quickly that's growing. What we're seeing, and we also work with a number of investors as well who are always on the lookout for new TechBio companies to invest in and portfolio-wise. And then asking them, having looked on the other side for the companies who are developing those new technologies, is how quickly we can analyze data using AI and machine learning and the tools out there available. Because if you look at the amount of data we process, just ChatGPT as an example, we're on an early version 2 or 3, whatever it may be, and just we're talking about a 12 to 24 months period. The amount of data just one AI tool has consumed is millions and millions and millions of times growing so exponentially. And if you take that to, say, version 10 in 2 years' time, you can see how much data and how quickly it's processing that. So to apply that to a TechBio company, and it literally is, the development is going to be so fast, so exponential. And I think that's the interesting thing that we are watching, keeping an eye on right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you'd say is moving beyond the hype is that you've got CEOs, putting cyber on the board agenda. I hope CEOs are putting cyber on the board agenda. That was my free tip, guys, okay? Not many freebies from me. Similarly, Carina, what are the things that you're seeing that are really impressing you coming out of the field right now?
So, not surprisingly, I'm going to focus on drug repurposing here, because this is the space we play in. And drug repurposing comes with lots of advantages, right? So you've got greatly reduced cost, expedited route to clinic, sustainability angle, also the patient angle, because you're not going to get as many side effects, or at least you know all of the toxic side effects and so on. The problem, however, with drug repurposing, and really why it's been so difficult to do to date, is you need to know something that nobody else knew for you to take an existing drug and apply it to a new condition. But this is really where AI can help a lot if you do it well. One nice example from me actually comes from one of our key advisors at the moment, Justin Stebbing. So he identified a cancer drug, baricitinib, and he had it repurposed in record time for COVID, and he did this during the pandemic. And it got FDA approved, and it got to the point where it was recommended by the World Health Organization for COVID. And that is one example of where, if you do it well, you can really do it well. And likewise, what we try and do, therefore, is apply tech, again, for drug repurposing, as you see again with the anti-necrotics. It's another example where hopefully, you would have all of the advantages and you've learned something new, again, using the technology the right way.
That's great. And I think just building on that, that we started this morning talking about modalities, and certainly the word drug repurposing can raise antibodies, biologics modality there, listening, amongst some of the biopharma industry. But, what we're really chasing in biopharma is innovative new biological mechanisms. And repurposing, you've got the opportunity to benefit patients, but you've also got the opportunity to prove those new mechanisms in a patient population very quickly, even if that isn't necessarily your final treatment. And I think, there's nothing like proving innovative biology in patients to really de-risk the concept that is a disease-modifying mechanism that may be worth investing further in. So I think repurposing may be the end point, but it also may be the enabling capability. If you think of the tool set, Cam, what's really impressing you at the moment in the field?
I think it's sort of a twofold thing of the level of accessibility and democratization we're seeing of these technologies, which is then leading to a massive wealth of hypothesis generation. So thanks to things like, sequencing becoming incredibly accessible, it's now, if you want to get a gene synthesized, depending on where you are, you could have that done overnight, a couple of days. You know, thanks to Nuclera's technology, you're now able to get proteins in an incredibly rapid turnaround. And that's really opening up the doors to lots of, you know, traditionally maybe underrepresented communities or people or, you know, use cases to start exploring biology as a solution for their problems, which is, I think, really interesting in the angle of when we're looking at medicine development, but also interesting when we start to look at making the non-medical applications more achievable. So, like in the synthetic biology world as well. So I think for me, it's that there's just this huge amount of hypothesis generation, but that more and more people are now able to actually engage in biotechnology. And so, you know, hopefully we start to see even more innovation in this space being driven by that.
Perfect, 10 out of 10. Susana, you know, CDD's been around for a while, so you've got a really nice time period you can look at. What are you seeing amongst your partners, and how are they kind of pushing beyond the hype, delivering value, and what's impressing you at the moment?
Yeah, so CDD Vault actually, well, collaborative drug discovery actually has been around for 20 years now. And I would say that what I have seen from my perspective is the huge amount of data, I mean, chemical and biological data that is created at a fast speed, right? And also the number of targets that are being identified with the new technologies, and not having to rely on traditional methods as we used to in the past. So yeah, I would say this, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting much faster and into really new biological space in terms of finding opportunities for new treatments, and that can only be good. We never have enough time to talk about this, so we're very careful on what questions we're asking. But Nav, can I just sort of, you know, challenge you more broadly? You know, how do we know we're creating value? You know, what are the outcomes we should be measuring? Ultimately, we all know it's patients that we're aiming for. But how are you kind of thinking about measuring the impact of what you're doing for your customers and partners?
So one of the key things for us supporting biotech companies is to make sure that they function in an environment which is always available to them. And the last thing that a company, especially in a startup mode, is afford any downtime. So the way we measure the impact we're making as an enabler of supporting biotech companies is the ability to make sure that they are always functioning, the data is always available, it's scalable, and it's secure. And we measure ourselves by the foundations of secure by design. So anything we build has to be secure by design as foundations. And we measure ourselves and the service we provide to the client on an uptime basis. So the clients that we support in this sector, there's no downtime, and that's our measurement.
Perfect. And you know, I just want to say to anyone who's kind of, you know, thinking about, you know, can they afford to make this kind of investment? Just do not underestimate the amount of organization and sophistication of the people on the other side of the table. You know, they're not as cuddly as Abdul over there. They're driving Ferraris, and they're having a very nice living, and the Russian Federation at the moment in particular are very happy to encourage their actions. If you're partnering with healthcare systems, you know, we would like that infrastructure to be more secure than perhaps it is. The suppliers of clinical informatics tools have not always made the investments that you would like. There may not be the audits that you would hope are happening across the cyber infrastructure of the suppliers. We saw United Healthcare pay a $22 million ransom a few months ago because of one of their cyber attacks. That has put a big flashing light above the healthcare industry and us by association, that we are an absolute honeypot. So, you know, multi-factor authentication and some really good policies, they can be a bit of a ball ache, but I'm afraid they are required in order to make sure we get to impact patients' lives as we all intend. Sorry, that's my advertorial lecture over. I'm going to mix it up a bit. Susana, you know, how are you measuring impact and outcomes, and you know, what indicators do you think will make a difference to the industry?
I think we will see, I mean, drugs coming to the market much faster than it used to be. So maybe, I don't know, in 2-3 years instead of 10 years. As mentioned before, targets being identified much faster. But also we will see probably treatments which will be personalized to the individual based on these AI tools. And yeah.
Fantastic. Cam, how are you thinking about measuring impact?
I think it comes as no surprise that Nuclera measures impact by the ability of our customers to get proteins through our system. And I think so far for soluble proteins, that's over 90%. But I think in the longer term, we would like to couch that, or, you know, nest that in the idea of how do we fit into the whole grand scheme of drug discovery. So if we're helping our customers get proteins, what are they then using those for? Is it helping them characterize a disease space more holistically? Is it allowing them to develop a totally new mechanism of action against a drug target that was previously thought undruggable? Is it doing something weird and wacky for, you know, environmental health or something along those lines? And then I think, you know, that's our, you know, like our core, I'd say, like quantitative metric. But then we also see, thinking along the lines of more sort of accessibility type examples. For instance, we've been working with a course called How to Grow Almost Anything, which is entirely about making a completely decentralized bioengineering platform so that anyone anywhere in the world could develop some kind of bio-based product. And I think, you know, that's another area where it's really satisfying, and for us to see the outputs of our technology enabling more and more people to be able to work on these kinds of projects.
And Cam, a bit of a follow-up there. So can you see your approach not just being used in classic sort of get me some of the target, so right at the beginning of drug discovery, but also, you know, optimization of a biologic, so finding the optimal binder in an antibody, or optimal output of a bioprocessing?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an area that we are actively exploring expansion into. Is how can you screen through a variety of proteins that you want to then work with, for instance, when you're looking at developability characteristics, or, you know, in an ideal scenario, can you actually do hit discovery, make the protein on our chip, and then put that through a small molecule discovery campaign. We've actually got a program doing that at the moment with an AI company, which I can talk, if anybody wants to talk about, I can chat about afterwards.
And absolutely, maybe you'll be able to, you know, bring in some organoids there, which neatly links me to my colleague on my right. So Carina, how do you see, you know, how are you thinking about, you know, what are the better outcomes, and really how are we measuring impact here?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a very simplistic answer because we're an AI-enabled drug discovery company. There are two clear-cut markers of success here. So in the clinical space, are you actually alleviating disease or not? Are you coming up with drugs that can actually treat patients or not? In the non-clinical space, how many of your partners or your commercial partners are actually interested in the technology you have? So for instance, with our necrosis compounds, I was surprised to the point where we were being invited, for instance, to NASA's Space Accelerator program to apply for that, because they're interested in tissue engineering in space and astronaut health. So for me, the marker of success there is how keen are other commercial players to work with you. But I think for me, regardless of what measures you have for success, something I learned as an academic, which is also applicable here, and something that I hold true to always when you're doing drug discovery, is very simply, you just need to follow the data. No matter what your marker of success is, you go where the data takes you. And if you do that well, what I've learned over the years is that's when you make the really game-changing discoveries. You may need to change the markers of success, but you never, move away from just following what the data is telling you.
That's great. And so I think, one of the slight challenges of TechBio is we do tend to always begin at the left-hand side of the sort of drug discovery chevron pattern that you've all seen on 100,000 PowerPoints in your careers, I'm sure. But I think the important thing is that it has a role to play across the whole of the paradigm. So I'm just trying to join up some examples. I'm going to start at the far right of the chevron. The whole of our industry is making absolutely game-changing new medicines are coming through the regulatory process every day. Hugh Nuttall, who was chairing or moderating the first panel this morning, I'm sure will take a huge amount of pride in his colleagues at Lilly and the approval of their anti-amyloid drug for Alzheimer's. I mean, we have massive unmet needs for patients. On the other side of the wall, as they're launching innovations now, they'll be having conversations with payers, and payers are going to be asking the question, that's great, Hugh, Lilly. I'll make Hugh the face of Lilly for the next 10 minutes or so. But which of these patients are going to respond to this medicine, and how do we engage in paying? And so being able to link our innovation back to patients and actually kind of prove benefit is kind of one of those areas that PrecisionLife are really active in. Payers are coming to us and saying, here's our rule book, show us this and we'll help you drive reimbursement. You go back into the clinic, some of the themes that Cam picked up, there is incredible richness of information in clinical trials data. I'm blown away that the pharma industry is prepared to share that data under FPA and pharma guidelines if you're prepared to publish the results. We've done an initial analysis of some data with a large pharma company, which we haven't published yet, but we're going out on the strength of that to talk to multiple pharma companies because we found stratification markers for, be helpful now, Rowan, if you've remembered the name. For placebo effect. Sorry, it'll come back to me. Hugh, write me up a script. So we found the potential markers of placebo effect. If we can show that those markers are consistent across multiple different indications, that'd be a really interesting tool for the clinical trial community to start using. And then you can come back into all of the areas of novel target biology we've heard before. For me, there is nothing like engaging with patients who have unmet needs. I'm sure, Carina, you've got plenty of examples thinking about the area that you're working in. Susana and Nav will be working with everyone across the spectrum. And Cam, I guess you're about to begin the adventure. We've just started a clinical trial in ME/CFS. 75 million people around the world without any treatment options whatsoever. It's just extraordinary how much unmet need that we've got to go at in this industry. Tremendous stuff doing. Anybody with any questions, and I will shut up for a moment. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Matthew Fife from Storm Therapeutics. That was a really excellent session, really interesting. Thank you. I recently read a book called The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleiman that touched upon a lot of these topics. And particularly, after Ab's terrifying display, I've got, when are AIs going to be smart enough to write their own AI code that can then self-improve such that the defenders, you guys, well, it's for both of you. It's for both.
The problem is the technology is available to everyone.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, the democratization. Cam mentioned the democratization. In that book, they talk about the democratization of AI and synthetic biology.
Excellent question. I think they're already there. We just have the governance around it right now. So if you go back, ChatGPT is the most widely known. If you go back to the first version of when ChatGPT came out, you could ask anything. How can I hack into a bank? And it'll tell you exactly how to do it. Can you give me the formula for a bomb, for example? And it'll tell you exactly what it was before the governance was put around AI. And I'm pretty confident the technology is already out there. So self-developing, self-propagating. Without the governance,
So does that mean we've got a bleak future then if the technology is already out there? So
we're essentially getting ahead of the curve and embracing it. Like I said earlier, it's all about embracing it. So traditionally, what I've just shown is called penetration testing or red teaming. And historically, for the last decade or so, it's been I go into your office or your environment and do an actual penetration test. And that's changing now. Everything's being done remotely due to something we went through the last couple of years. But that has also changed now in something called pen testing as a service. And what you can essentially procure is someone to do what I have demonstrated, but on a constant basis, and it's using pure machine learning to do so. And it doesn't sleep. It carries on. It's constantly doing it. So how we're getting kind of ahead of that curve is that we can't guarantee that it's finding all the vulnerabilities because we don't know exactly what it's doing to find them, except if we add some consultancy time to confirm the vulnerabilities. And yeah, it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, and you'll also have people monitoring logons to your network.
Absolutely.
Unsuccessful logons, where are they coming from? You can map them across the world. So there's a lot of tools out there that boards should be discussing and allocating funding towards and making sure, because there is nothing worse than losing your data. That's everything you've worked for.
Absolutely.
And if you do lose your data and it's ransomed, the best outcome is you phone a number and they've got first, second, and third line IT support. Don't bet the house on that. We've seen people not only ransoming data back to healthcare services, but actually getting hold of patient emails and getting in contact with them and asking for money to make sure their individual data isn't disclosed. There's examples of that as well. So, on that cheery note, we're out of time.
Join me in
Please thank my phenomenal panel.
Thank you.